Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rocky Mountain MIRECC Short Takes on Suicide Prevention podcast. I'm Melissa McHarg, and today I'm joined by Team Red, White, and Blue's Mike Greenwood and Caroline Angel. Thank you for joining me, both of you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for having us.
Here's a quick snapshot of some of the things we're going to discuss today. That will include Team Red, White, and Blue enrichment equation, which is health plus people plus purpose, transitions from military to civilian life, facilitating authentic connections, data collection and what the evidence shows us, and a pretty terrific veteran-civilian partnership. And there's also a really good recent podcast with Team Red, White, and Blue's Executive Director Blaine Smith that was on the VA podcast site, and we will definitely provide a link for our listeners because it gives a really good overview of Team Red, White, and Blue's origins. And just as a quick introduction, Team Red, White, and Blue is a nationwide organization that has over 115,000 members and is in over 200 locations. So let's just jump right in. Mike and Caroline, could you each spend a few minutes sharing your role and your personal connection with Team Red, White, and Blue?
Definitely. I'll kick us off here. So I started with Team Red, White, and Blue, and I've kind of been a member of Team Red, White, and Blue on many different levels. Back in 2013, when my wife and I moved to Colorado Springs, we didn't know anybody here, and we were kind of struggling to find a community. So I was out running on the Air Force Academy one day, and I was pretty bored with being by myself. So I decided to come home. I Googled veteran fitness groups in Colorado Springs and noticed that Team Red, White, and Blue was the first group that came up. And I saw the eagle and I was instantly hooked. So a couple months later, myself and another gentleman named Brian Meese started the chapter here. And since then, I've been a regular member when Brian and I started. Shortly after that, I took on the Veteran Outreach Director role in Colorado Springs. And then when Brian was deployed to Afghanistan, I stepped into the chapter captain role. And since then, I have been an Eagle Leader Fellow. And most recently, I've been hired on as the Northwest Regional Program Manager for Team Red, White, and Blue.
Wow, that's incredible. And how big of a region does that Northwest region encompass?
So we have, it's a pretty big area geographically, but we have Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Montana, North and South Dakota, and Wyoming.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, pretty big, right?
That is big. Yeah, absolutely. And Caroline, how about you?
I have a sort of a different story on my way to RWB. I serve as Team RWB's Director of Research, and we have Eagle Research and Innovation Center now. So I started in 2013 as a volunteer in this role. So after Mike R.N, who's the Team RWB founder and chairman of the board, and Lou Nemec, who was the National Athletics Director at the time, were already collecting some information from veterans when they signed up to join the team. And this was inspired by Mike's brother, Mark, who was really pushing for outcome measures to be collected. I'd been working at the University of Pennsylvania at the time, but was looking to make a transition in my work, which had focused on post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth, mainly in studying resilience and leadership in veterans, military, serving and policing communities. And when I learned about RWB, I became really excited because based on the model that they were working on, the local, consistent, inclusive activities, I knew that there was a very strong scientific basis for the organization. I was just interested in getting on board and learning more about what they were doing and their impact. So the role and that was in 2013, the role sort of grew from there. But personally, I was living in central New Jersey at the time. My closest chapter was West Point, which I was commuting back and forth to activities to. And I decided that it really needed to have a local presence in my own community. Along with a couple of local leaders, we founded the Team RWB Central New Jersey chapter, which I led as a chapter captain for over 2 years.
So it sounds like both of you were pretty instrumental in getting a local Team Red, White, and Blue going where you were both located.
Yeah, I would say so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's normally how we start. Somebody will see the need in their community, raise their hand, and start running with Team Red, White, and Blue. So, I'm gonna impact my community. I'm gonna do it under the eagle, and let's get going. That's the kind of leaders we attract in Team Red, White, and Blue.
That's really awesome. I really like that kind of organic quality of how that happens, and giving anyone who happens to be in the community with the drive and the passion the opportunity to start their own thing.
Well, it was an incredible opportunity to have a leadership experience. So I'm a civilian. I was driven really by the desire to do more to serve veterans and be part of something bigger than myself. And I just knew how critical, the weekly engagements that we do, the activities and opportunities for social activity, developing these genuine relationships with other people, that I felt as a civilian, it was my turn really to step up and to do something. And it's been great. And I'm sure Mike can speak to this too, being part of the organization for as long as we've have to see it grow and develop, and people to be seeking more opportunities and getting more engaged at the local level. It's because it's really had a profound impact on my life, beyond the research piece, which has been a major career growth piece for me, certainly.
Absolutely. Yes, and we'll be talking more later about that civilian-veteran connection, which I think is a really strong piece of Team Red, White, and Blue. We'll get back to that later. But what you say kind of leads into the next question, which is talking about the Team Red, White, and Blue equation, which is health plus people plus purpose. And I was wondering if one of you could give us a crash course on that equation and approach to wellness.
Sure. Well, Team RWB's mission is to enrich veteran lives by connecting them to their communities through physical and social activity. But in terms of enrichment, we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about what exactly it means to enrich a life. Because if you say in your mission statement you're going to do that, it bears a responsibility to act. And Blaine Smith and the RWB executive staff, and certainly at the regional and really down at the community level, have been working to develop out ideas about what exactly it does mean to enrich a life, in which Blaine has really offered the enrichment equation, which is the combination of health, people, and purpose, as you've said. So health is physical activity to improve physical, mental, and emotional health. People is to build genuine relationships with others. And purpose is having a sense of individual and shared purpose, including renewed identity. When you come to activities seeking an opportunity to be more engaged in something as easy or as hard, where you're pushing yourself as a run group, it facilitates these opportunities to meet other people, and then eventually determine how you want to engage with your team, building a sense of purpose we've seen as part of that.
That makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense, especially going back to what Mike said about how he was running on his own on the Air Force Academy, but yet he was kind of looking for something more, maybe something a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was looking for when I joined Team Red, White, and Blue. My wife and I moved here. We didn't know anybody. And we really needed to be part of something bigger than we were. We were really into health. We enjoyed being around people, which we weren't, and we both liked leading. So it was just a natural fit that we found Team Red, White, and Blue.
Absolutely.
Right, and just to add, the framework for the enrichment equation, health, people, and purposes, really has a very strong scientific basis. And so we see it in terms of individuals who are just participating for their own desire to become enriched, or they may not even be aware that there's a gap, but they may experience these benefits as byproduct of going on a run with other people. It's been a really incredible way to watch this unfold. And this is just what's interesting about this for us, I think, conceptually, is that we know we can, as an organization, actively intervene in these areas. And what entails an entire enriched life has even a broader scope, but these are the things that we know we do, especially creating these genuine relationships with, have all kinds of benefits for health and wellness over time.
Yes, and I have been really impressed, as you say, what a strong scientific base that Team Red, White, and Blue has shown, and commitment to outcomes almost from the very beginning. I'll go ahead and move on to the next area that we were going to talk about, and it relates to what we were saying. And as far as how Team Red, White, and Blue might be able to meet people at a transition period. Can you talk a little bit more about that transition from military to civilian life and some of the challenges that might arise around that, and how Team Red, White, and Blue might be able to ease that transition?
I could definitely talk about the transition from being a soldier in the Army and moving to being a civilian. When I left active duty in 2013, I struggled with connecting to my community. I struggled with being away from my team, but that struggle didn't start for a couple months. I remember the first couple months upon transitioning, the high of being out of the military was pretty awesome. I felt like the world was at my fingertips. I can take on any challenge that came my way. But shortly after that, and it started to settle in that, I didn't have my team anymore. I didn't have anybody to follow or anybody to lead anymore. I quickly started having challenges with being a civilian again. So specifically, some of the challenges I remember having upon transitioning was, I remember sitting on the subway in New York, heading to class, and I was incredibly mad for some reason. I don't know why I was mad, but I remember looking at everybody, and I was very, very angry with everybody for some reason. And it didn't click for a while. A lot of my anger was I didn't understand the people. Well, I wasn't allowing myself to understand them, I should say. And I felt like they didn't understand me, which isn't a good kind of feeling for you to have as somebody who likes being around people, right? Like, I was mad at people and I didn't understand why. So upon kind of figuring out that, nature and running and being active was making me feel a little better, I stumbled upon RWB in 2013. But before that, I would say the challenge I faced is well, let me back up. It's not every veteran's challenge, anger or struggling to be part of a team again or finding purpose again like that. But it's very common amongst the veterans that I've interacted with, my friends or people who've raised their hand to join Team Red, White, and Blue. A lot of them are seeking that team, that commitment, that camaraderie again, being part of something that's bigger than yourself. I can step back now and say, that's why I had those problems. But at the time, I wasn't able to identify it until I've actually experienced it. So what we're doing at Team Red, White, and Blue is, we try to reach people before they transition. So they have a community to go to when they go home. So they're not stuck in that 1 or 2 year window where they want nothing to do with XYZ and they start to struggle and don't really understand how to maneuver through that struggle. We want to be in the community already and have a team for them to jump into when they come back.
That's very interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you're able to reach out to folks before they actually enter that transition phase? Yeah,
definitely. So in Colorado Springs specifically, I can speak directly to that. So we had a gentleman here, Alex Morrow, was a young lieutenant who came from the West Point chapter, and he joined our leadership team as a veteran outreach director. Alex was a bright young man, so he went to MWR and went through the process of getting Team Red, White, and Blue identified as a nonprofit organization on Fort Carson. So what that did for us here in the Springs is it allowed us to go into transitioning classes, into transitioning units, and to show the soldiers who are going to exit the military that, we're here in Colorado Springs for you, and chances are we're going to be back in your community when you're there. So we try to we try to get people like Alex to spread the word in their units or to take the initiative and submit the packets to these military bases to allow us to go on there and welcome these guys and girls to our team.
Wow, that's really terrific. And can you just briefly tell us what MWR is, just so that our listeners are sure what you're referring to?
Yeah, the MWR is it's a facility that's on all of I think all military bases. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically fitness and kind of activity centers for active duty soldiers and their family, or active military members, I should say, and their families. A lot of them operate the gyms, or they'll put on similar events to what we're already doing outside of the gates of the military. They'll put on social events. They'll put on, whitewater rafting events. I remember that was one of the ones that were put on up in Fort Drum when I was there. They do various events. So it's almost a natural fit. If we are able to get in there, it's a natural fit for our members because outside of the gates of the military installation, that's what we're doing on a daily basis. We're putting on events that attract people to be together. If that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. That's really terrific. So that kind of brings me a little bit to some of what you're saying, and also in what's in the terrific background materials that Caroline has provided, and which we'll also provide for our listeners. I'm wondering if you or both of you could talk a little bit more about that collective sense of purpose and how Team Red, White, and Blue might potentially fill a certain void, because it seems like something that's particularly relevant to a military population.
Yeah, this is a great question, and what I can do is I can help walk you through a membership, typical membership. So, again, going back to my personal story, having felt like I was lacking purpose when I got out, I joined Team Red, White, and Blue to gain that purpose again. So our members across the country, our leaders are joining Team RWB for many different reasons. But we generally see that they want to be with people. They want to build quality relationships. Every event that we put on, there are multiple people coming from different backgrounds, different military backgrounds, civilian backgrounds, and ethnicity backgrounds for that matter. So how are we attacking the need for purpose? So I would say, based on my experience with Team Red, White, and Blue, we have given veterans and civilians an opportunity to lead. Currently, we have just shy of 2,000 volunteer leaders across the country. It's a pretty big number.
That is a large number.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And these volunteer leaders have, I would say, they've built Team RWB from the ground up. And Caroline and I have watched it happen. I think when I joined, we had just under 10,000 members back in 2013. And we've kind of, our participation and our view, we've seen them build it that way. So they're doing it through leadership. They're doing it through impact. They're out in their communities. They're changing their communities for the better. Communities are calling on Team RWB when disaster strikes amongst other veteran service organizations. They're seeing the potential of engaging with veterans as a positive impact for the community. So that purpose alone, to be called upon as a community impact person, because of the leadership that you're displaying, I can tell you on a personal level, I had so much pride in being on the other end of that line when somebody calls and says, "Hey, we need sandbags for Manitou Springs. Like they're going to flood, and we don't know who else to turn to." So we teamed up with another veteran service organization, Team Rubicon, and we brought out about 75 veterans, active duty members, civilians, Air Force Academy cadets, and we filled, I think, somewhere around 10,000 sandbags for the community of Manitou Springs to prevent flooding. Like the people who were there that day, I would say they were elated to be there. They did not want to leave, if that's a good picture to paint. When we were done, we had to tell them, we guys have to leave. We have no more sandbags. But it was a great experience. And I would say that, that's what we're delivering across the country. We're delivering to people who are organizing those events and people who are raising their hands to participate in it. And that purpose alone is really driving change in our communities.
That's really awesome. Go ahead, Caroline.
No, I was just going to add on to that. That's just one of the wonderful examples. But you also see, additionally, the leadership training that we're developing internally to help build leaders who are empathetic, authentic, genuine, loyal, and effective. It really is focused on building genuine relationships with others. So being leaders in the community also trickles down to the individual impact we're having on our members, because I think a large part of the collective sense of purpose and fulfilling that void is not only leading others, but having an opportunity to be led. And I think there's a gap in leadership for not just veterans, but also civilians in life, and just feeling like having the exposure to people who, as a civilian, to veterans who've had not only training in leadership, but are many incredible leaders, has filled a huge void that I, as a civilian, didn't even know was there. That people really have your back. They are loyal to you. They're willing to share their story and listen. That, for the first time, you really have an opportunity to express yourself because people are focused on really these genuine connections. And it's been, and the goal setting, on the individual level, leaders create opportunities for members to not only set their own goals, but to take risks to set up and achieve. I mean, a lot of I've had a number of conversations with Blaine Smith about this was, the value of shared hardship and working in teams to tackle problems, but especially around the goals of starting with why we're here and sharing our story. I mean, the piece around shared hardship as a civilian is particularly interesting because I hear that come out of a lot of discussions on leadership and the value of that in leadership and really creating close connections between team members who, helps fulfill that sense of connection and purpose. But there's a really void in that language, I think, in civilian America. I'm so grateful all the time to have leaders to talk to and to learn from and to turn to who have educated me about just a number of additional issues, not only how to do things, but about myself that I would not have had an opportunity to have prior to Red, White, and Blue.
Let's go ahead and talk about some of the evidence behind what you've been describing here. And Team Red, White, and Blue has made a really strategic and purposeful effort to collect data that drives both the programming as well as helping connect your mission to stakeholders. So Caroline, I'm wondering if you could take a few moments to talk about the data collection efforts and how it kind of dynamically contributes to the evolution of the programming in Team Red, White, and Blue.
Thank you for this question. As a research director, I really appreciate it, but I think there's been a very proactive effort to develop and establish our outcomes and our measures, and primarily because in order to know something is working, you can't just say, oh, we know it's working. You have to collect meaningful, thoughtful evidence to support that. We have originally, when I signed, the original efforts were around getting some information about people when they signed up to join the team. In 2014, 2015, and 2016, we started to administer our annual survey, which I think you will provide a link to, the report out of the Institute of Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, really identified us as an evidence-based, proactively collecting these outcomes. But our goals, the way it contributes is that once you have a broad response from a number of individuals about the impact the program is having, you can understand how the variables are related to each other to inform not only, feedback on the local level, but to identify and tweak kind of the questions. So we've been working on three main initiatives right now in the Research and Innovation Center, which is one, to solidify our measurement of the enrichment equation. We're developing the Enrich Life Scale. When you say you're going to enrich a life and you have a framework for that through the enrichment equation, there are specific questions you need to be gauging over from people to reflect that. So we're designing our own scale and hope to start to use that as a way to track people over time. The second initiative is that we're really in the process of developing very specific measures to track leader development. Eagle Leadership Development Program, which is led by Joe Quinn and his team, we're going to be initiating an online platform and face-to-face programming to develop leaders, but we also need to track them to understand how our program is impacting them as they grow within the training modules. And finally, our third initiative really is to pursue the most rigorous research design with an eye to innovation and hopefully randomized controlled trials, and collaborate with other institutions, organizations, and universities to understand our impact, because understanding impact should really be carried out in the most rigorous way available. That's sort of the direction. But internally, we've established, we probably have 6 internal projects that are ongoing that use a systematic scientific process to examine questions that we care about.
Very interesting. And can you give us the highlights of some of the most pertinent results, especially as they relate to some of the things that Mike was talking to about around connectedness and sense of purpose?
I think the broadest, so the findings you can see in the report specifically, but I think the most important thing that we found is that the more you're engaged on the local level with your chapter, the more engaged you are in your local level, participating in the programs, even wearing the eagle is enriching the people. And so the more participation, the greater the impact across every measure. We really encourage local, consistent engagement with the chapters to the extent that's possible. The whole idea of the programming is to meet people where they're at, which will vary person to person, but that we've seen across our annual surveys that people who are most engaged, especially our leaders, will report the highest impact on those areas.
Absolutely. And just in general, as you said, we will provide a link so that folks can look at those results for themselves. And there's also some really great infographics that you have in there. But basically, what the data is showing is that there is an increase in connectedness, sense of purpose, general overall kind of well-being. Would that be fair?
Across the board, that we have members do report that they have increases in health, people, and purpose, especially as they become more engaged in the programs.
And Melissa, I think I've seen that on the local level. I'll give you a couple examples. Here in Colorado Springs, this is probably on the right side of the bell curve, but here in Colorado Springs, we have a couple who met at one of our events and who stayed together for a while, and they were recently married last year. From their interaction with Team Red, White, and Blue. I think Caroline's mentioned a couple times, when it gets down to it, we're building quality relationships amongst people, and we're seeing it. We're seeing Eagles get married. We're seeing people outside of our events, outside of our weekly consistent events that we put on across the country. People are engaging with each other consistently. So what that looks like is member A and member B may meet on a trail run on Wednesday night, but Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they're continuing to go on trail runs together. So what we're seeing is that connectedness is really, it's taking hold outside of Team Red, White, and Blue for that matter. And I think what we're noticing with our leadership development and as members and leaders move through the leadership development program that Joe and his team are working on, they are taking on bigger leadership challenges. What I mean by that is we have people across the country who are raising their hand and joining community boards. They're running for local office. They're taking on bigger challenges in their communities that are going to affect it in a positive way. And I think it's safe to say, like, with what Joe and his team are delivering through that program is opening them up to take on those challenges. So, that's one of the benefits of being a leader in Team Red, White, and Blue and being a member of Team Red, White, and Blue for that matter. You could possibly find your next spouse or you can address those bigger leadership challenges that your community really needs. I personally think nobody's more equipped to do it than the Eagle leader.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm really glad you brought up that point, because that is one of the metrics I do focus in on when the data comes in, is that how many individuals report spending time with their teammates outside of an event. Because it gives you a very good kind of snapshot of when a genuine relationship is certainly created. Thanks for bringing that up.
Right. Those are some really kind of exciting results. Can you kind of tell us what the next steps might be with the data collection and the research?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we're in the process now. We've just developed this. It's over 3 years and many focus months. We have the enriched life scale, which we're working on the scientific validation process, psychometric measurement, so that beyond our internal uses that we can offer to it's based in positive psychology, it's based in wellness, it tracks health, people, purpose in the ways that we've shared, that we've defined it. So I think that'll be a way to really look at enrichment across America by trying to get a scale like that into a number of different communities, which is how it will be through the validation process. We do have a couple academic partnerships. I don't want to talk in depth about them too much right now, but we are pursuing randomized controlled trials. and other kinds of clinical innovations that we can gain more internal insight about our programs, but also be able to communicate that through the most rigorously designed studies in a way that we can contribute to generalizable knowledge about the impact our programs have on veterans, civilians, and our communities.
That's fascinating. So do you kind of foresee that the enriched life scale is something that can be used by other organizations as well?
Sure, absolutely. So the language of the enriched life scale is not specific to red, white, and blue, although it reflects the areas that we feel we can actively intervene upon that contribute to an enriched life. So, for example, it talks about positive emotional health, physical health, including physical activity. So physical activity at a standard set by the CDC and the American Heart Association are not typically measured as part of a health scale. So we've included pieces like that. But the language itself is not specific to red, white, and blue, although it reflects the outcome of enrichment, which we built our mission on.
Gotcha. That's very exciting. We'll look forward to seeing that when you have that validated. And
yeah,
so
we're very fired up about it.
So that kind of brings me to something that you mentioned is that what you're doing can also have clinical use, and that's something that I found very interesting. Looking at the kind of background material that you gave me. So Team Red, White, and Blue, obviously you've shown has a really strong connection between veteran and civilian, but it also works collaboratively with clinicians. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that for some of the clinicians that might be in our audience, how Team Red, White, and Blue might be able to work with providers or other community members.
Sure. Well, I can speak to the broader question. Maybe Mike can talk about what's going on in the chapters that he's engaged with. But certainly, I mean, I think clinicians should absolutely see Team Red, White, and Blue as a resource. I know there are a lot of clinical recommendations specifically around the areas of enrichment that we've talked about, getting people more physically active. The body of research around physical health, exercise contributes to physical, mental, and emotional health is enormous. But I think there's sometimes a gap between what clinicians have in their toolbox of saying, oh, you should be more physically active, and then creating a link between saying that and then facilitating that engagement for their client into a community organization that can deliver that, frankly, free of charge. I mean, our events don't cost anything for individuals to participate. So I think for clinicians to know that RWB is a resource for them, that they can, should they have one in their chapter, or even, there's a large community, individuals may sign up to join the team. They may not have a physical location in their neighborhood, but there are a number of vast online opportunities and resources, very vast Facebook groups, that people can participate in a community. And I think just having that as a resource to know that, and even if they have a client who could not be physically active or is not willing to be, or it's not part of their goal set, the community service activities are available. Certainly the social activities all facilitate the benefits of meeting other people. So that would be my main. It's that we can facilitate a number of recommendations that would be clinically indicated by working collaboratively with the clinical community.
That's pretty awesome. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. I think at the local level, what Caroline just said, it looks like this. So Team Red, White, and Blue community or chapters in organizing areas are building a network of resources. Ultimately, when they go out into the community, the more people they meet, the more people raise their hand, the longer they're on a trail run together or a yoga event or having coffee together, they're identifying services that each of those persons can provide. So what I mean by that is, we'll take Colorado Springs and Denver specifically. I happen to live here, so I have a lot of interaction with them. So up in Denver, the leadership team up there, a lady, Jill and Brandon Young, developed a relationship with the Veterans Transition Court. So what they're doing is, as these veterans go through that system, when they get to a certain point in their transition, they're being pushed, or not pushed, but recommended to Team Red, White, and Blue to gain that community and to be part of something. So that's one of the successes there is we are offering weekly mentorship or daily mentorship to some of those members who choose to participate with us. And then on the service side, what we are seeing with the VA here on the local level is they know we're in these communities. So they're pushing our information out at the VA clinics, and then they're also recommending us as a go-between for that member who's using the services at the VA and may not be using it on a daily basis, but still needs to benefit from some of the things that being part of a community and finding purpose again offer. So they're recommending them to Team Red, White, and Blue and saying, hey, these guys are doing this on a daily basis. Why don't you go and hang out with them? And in some cases, we get recommendations from the provider themselves, who happen to be members of Team Red, White, and Blue and other fields. They'll send them out. I think one of the most effective ways for mental health providers or anybody who's interested in offering their services authentically to Team Red, White, and Blue and their members, I would say to simply go out to an event, experience it, and be part of the team. There's no better way to say, like, I have something to offer you than to join them as a team member. And that's something that we try to encourage people who want to be part of the team to do is if you have something to give, go out and give yourself, and eventually you're going to get to that point where you're going to be able to impact people in a positive way.
That's terrific. So you kind of answered my question, I think, that I had is how practically would someone go about that if they had we're working with a veteran that they might want to recommend. So you're saying just kind of go out there and join an event yourself and get started that way.
Yeah, I would say the first step would be to go on teamrwb.org and click join the team. Once you do that, you're going to see a drop down. You're going to see basically where all of our chapters or organizing areas are located. And you should have an email address for the chapter captain there or the point of contact for that chapter. I would say start with an email. Say, hey, I'm here. I want to participate or join the team. They're going to get your notification once you join and start the conversation there. But ultimately, I think the most effective way of integrating and being part of the team is to go out and experience what our members are experiencing together.
Yeah, and I agree.
And the way they can find this local information would be to just go on your website, and that would connect you with the local information.
That's correct. It'll pull up your location based on where you're signing in from, or
Gotcha.
you can click join the team and you'll see all of the states and you can kind of filter through there. But the easiest way is teamrwb.org, click join the team and start moving from there. It's pretty easy once you get on that spot.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank both of you so much for sharing your time and your experiences with us. I'm wondering, is there anything that we haven't covered or any final thoughts or takeaways that you'd kind of like to share with our audience?
I just want to say thank you so much for having us. It's a real privilege to speak with you and Mike. And if there's any more additional information, you can feel free to reach out to us. Certainly, you can reach me at caroline.angel@teamrwb.org. If you're interested in talking about research or any of our outcomes, I'm happy to share that broader community for specific questions.
Terrific. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I second that. If anybody wants to follow up with me specifically, Mike.Greenwood@teamrwb.org. And I would just say, get out there, join the team, be part of the team. Team RWB is changing the communities that they organize in. And it's, in my opinion, it's going to go a long way with the success of our country. The Eagle leader is really going to step up here in the next couple of years. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we have an Eagle leader as the president of the United States.
I like that. I like bold. Okay. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you again both so much. This is a really exciting topic, and I'm hoping that we might be able to follow up with another Team Red, White, and Blue member, maybe talking a little bit more about the leadership element. And I'd very much like to thank our listeners and invite you to click on the links that we're going to provide to more information about some of the evidence base as well as some of the writings that have come from Team Red, White, and Blue. And we will look forward to joining you next time.